I never thought anything strange would come from this day. On a rather sunny day, I filled up the trash bin next to my street with the garbage that had been filling my home. I knew that the dumpster truck would be around soon to empty it as it always had been every day. Seeing as I had nothing else to do for the morning, I decided it would be the proper time to go for a quick 5-minute jog to the next block downtown. In fact, the temperature was in the perfect spot so that I never really got too hot until the end of my jog. As I was walking back to my home as part of the cool down, I was shocked at what I found. The trash in the bin had not been picked up, but rather was strewn about all around the bin. Barks, root beer cans were littered around the bin in a circle along with various other bits of debris. The black trash bag that I had placed the unwanted material into appeared to be emptied completely and was just laid on top of the bin. Wondering what could have happened, I began to clean up the unexpected mess. However, as I was about to place one of the Barks cans back into the bag, it seemed as if the sack wasn't completely empty. I curiously peered into it to find an old SNES cartridge. I didn't remember throwing out something like that recently. In fact, every SNES game that I had ever bought before is still sitting in my basement. I figured maybe whoever littered my trash everywhere did this, so I took the game out and examined it. What was on it surprised me. I know there are a lot of stories about games that have a label torn off or just a suspicious looking cartridge to begin with. However, this label actually seemed professional in its making. The only thing off about it was the premise of this game as shown by the label. The title of this game was simply My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, similar to how it is titled just by the show's name on the iOS game. The Generation 4 character models were even present on the cartridge as well. Twilight Sparkle, Pinkie Pie, Fluttershy, and all the other main characters were present. This is especially odd since this version of the show came out in 2010, which was way after the time of anyone making SNES games for a profit. I then thought back to a particular game known as Battle Kid for the original NES. Someone had actually programmed that for an old system long after it was abandoned by most developers. In fact, the guy was even selling a physical copy of it to people for a small profit. After hearing this, I figured maybe it was some fan developer that wanted to share his or her creation with someone else. I was rather curious as to why it had to be done in such a messy manner, though. They could have just left the game on my doorstep and I would have gladly sat down to play it. As I was beginning to walk back into my home, I noticed that the back of the cartridge didn't feel as smooth as it should have. My fingers had slid across a rough patch somewhere. I flipped the supposed game over as I noticed one piece of tape on the back. In black marker and almost seeming as if it was in Times New Roman font, it read, "I'm sharing the magic. T.S." T.S.? Those are the same initials as those of Tara Strong, the voice actor who is Twilight Sparkle within the game that it is based on. I thought it was cool that whoever made this had also gotten the approval of one awesome voice actor as well. I remember seeing a saying somewhere once before that described whatever Tara Strong touches turns to gold. Since I have yet to see anything terribly bad come out of whatever she's a part of, I thought that saying would have some merit in determining how good this game really was to play. I think I've rambled on long enough about how I managed to come across this game. I think it's time to describe what came from playing it. When I first booted it up, I was surprised to see that the 16-bit sprites within the game actually closely resembled that the 6 main ponies in the show looked like. They were sitting in front of what is Fluttershy's home in the show. They seemed to be relaxing with a nice little picnic. Twilight was reading another book as usual. Fluttershy seemed to be resting along with her pet bunny Angel, resting right next to her. Rainbow Dash could be seen just lying down on her back with some sunglasses on. Pinkie Pie seemed to be focused on waiting for something to come out from underneath a picnic rag? I don't even know. She's hard to figure out in the show, too. Rarity and Applejack just had their backs against a tree. All of this was covered with a classic logo which read, My Little Pony. Most impressive yet was the audio. It was a classic remix of Pinkie Pie's Smile song from the show, which is one of my favorites of all time. It always seemed to cheer me up in my worst days. Hearing it through an SNES sound chip was just beautiful. I knew this game actually had some effort put into it. After I was getting over the beauty of the Smile track, I pressed start to start the game. The first few screens explained the basic controls I would have to use to get past certain obstacles. If anything, the gameplay was similar to what Trine had to offer, in which you would have to use all of your characters to get past certain obstacles. For example, Rainbow Dash would be necessary to remove thunderclouds and fly over things, while Fluttershy could be used to tame and walk past any large living creatures that you would happen to run past. Of course, for the inanimate obstacles along with several other threats, Twilight was always there to work her magic. Pinkie Pie was able to launch a party cannon attack, which somehow managed to turn enemies and projectiles into some sort of cake batter. Applejack's main purpose was bucking all of the apples out of a tree for more food in the event that your party's health got too low. Apple trees were very rare in this game, though, and would only provide a maximum of 3 apples when bucked. Rarity was simply used for the majority of stealthy portions in the game, in which you would have to get past a guard or avoid being detected, as you had to use one of several of her outfits to blend in with your surroundings. Now that I've got that lengthy description of the way the game played out of the way, it's time to describe what's truly frightening about this experience. After playing through a majority of the levels for about an hour, I came across a level simply titled Stage 16, Stop. I thought that was odd. The way Stop was written was also unnerving, as it almost seemed small drips of blood were dripping from each of the red letters as the level faded into view. I was horrified by what I saw. Dead, lifeless trees that seemed more like Nintendo 64 graphics were appearing on the screen. The sky was also blackened with a slight hint of red. The ground I had been walking on was gray instead of the lively colors I had been seeing before. The character who was on the screen was Fluttershy, who seemed more worried than usual. The freakiest part of all of this was the playing of the Smile song in reverse. This version wasn't even the 16-bit version from the title screen. It sounded like an actual instrumental of the song just played in reverse. I was beyond words at this point. Whoever made this game was a sick, twisted individual. Confused why there was a sudden change of atmosphere, I decided to move forward, only to see a giant, bony black hand come out of the ground and grab Fluttershy. She was crushed within that same instant, blood running out into every direction. The game had never been this graphic with a character death before. In fact, there was never any blood in the event that a character had temporarily fainted. Deciding to try a different approach to overcoming the obstacle of the hand, I thought I could use Rainbow Dash to fly well above and over it. However, to my horror, the hand reached up all the way to the blackened sky and still crushed poor Dash with that same grip that had gotten the best of me before. Maybe Pinkie Pie would help me accomplish something with an insane stroke of luck? Nope. She was crushed into a giant pool of blood as well. I tried switching to Twilight to see if I could use her magic to get across, but the game was bugged and would not let me at this point. I thought maybe I could use Rarity to get across with a camouflage disguise of sorts. No such luck. That camouflage was soon blood-stained. I tried switching to Twilight again, but she still wasn't selectable. Applejack was my last hope. Of course, she was crushed as easily as someone would bite into a single apple. Ow. I had given up all hope of beating this game when the game suddenly put Twilight into control. In fact, I was no longer pressing any buttons. Twilight was just casually strolling past the spot where the other 5 members of my party were brutally crushed as if they were toothpicks. After she reached the edge of the screen, a dialogue box appeared. Princess Celestia was right. Friends really do come in handy when you need them. After I pressed A to remove the dialogue, the reversed smile song stopped. It was dead silent for about 10 more seconds, then another dialogue box appeared. Their potential was exceedingly great. It even felt so good to possess it all for myself. I feel as if I could accomplish anything now. What kind of sick madness was this? This was not the Twilight I knew from the show. She would never harm her friends just for her own personal gain. Would she? Then Twilight turned directly towards me. I could see a red pixelated glowing in her eyes as she just stared at me intently. I'm only merely doing what you've been doing this whole entire time. I'm using my friends as a means of escaping my current life. You've grown bored of your life in the same way I have mine. It's time to move on. Using them? How is anything she's done even remotely comparable to my feelings? Almost as if in response to my question, she answered, Your own life is empty as was mine. You turned elsewhere to keep yourself entertained. You needed a purpose. I found mine, but it seems as if you still need to find yours. At this point, a very disturbing image of Twilight with an unsettling smile, just like the one seen in the episode of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, titled Lesson 0. That smile sent shivers down my spine when I saw it in the show, but this far tops what that detailed. Everything about this seemed as if a real-life photograph had been snapped with a high-quality camera. Her eyes were completely missing. Beyond each of the sockets was just a black void. The mouth was also toothless. There was no tongue or any other features within it either. It was just a black void as the eyes were. At this point, text just splattered across the screen, almost as if each letter stroke was carved with a bloody knife. The text read, I'm sharing the magic. At this point, a loud, ear-piercing scream suddenly came out of my speakers. I covered my ears in a vain attempt to block out the sound, but it was still coming through. I fumbled with the power button on the SNES for a few seconds and the sound finally stopped as the game was shut off. I ejected the game cartridge and left it sitting on my kitchen table. I knew I had to share this experience with everyone, and I needed all the proof I could get to show everyone my case was real. However, I felt really tired despite the time only being about 1 in the afternoon, so I figured a quick nap wouldn't hurt me much. However, during this quick nap, I happened to have a strange dream. I felt like I was walking down the street in my original hometown, Belleville, Connecticut. I was just casually walking down the street when I stopped in front of someone's trash bin. I madly ravaged through the person's trash receptacle for whatever strange reason, littering all kinds of trash here and there. I also happened to take something out of a bag that I had somehow been carrying. That something was the cursed cartridge I had managed to come across earlier. So far, the front label looked normal. But then it mutated into the shape of the frightening image of Twilight that I had described earlier. Scared to even look at it for more than a few seconds, I dropped the cartridge and ran away from that residence as fast as I could. When I woke up from this dream, I was relieved that I was still in my home. However, the oddest part of it was looking at my kitchen table and noticing that the game was missing. I could have sworn I put that game on the table. As I was madly searching around my home for the game, I got frustrated and knew it was futile to try searching for the game when I was getting more and more stressed out with every minute. So I decided to take a break and check my email. My mother had sent me an email detailing a strange incident that happened to her home that morning. Someone had gone and messed with her trash just like what was done to me earlier. She made no mention of a game though. However, I knew she probably thought the game was just more garbage as she wasn't very interested in gaming to begin with. I didn't bother asking her about it as that seemed like a weird question just coming straight out of left field at the time. Plus there was the slight fact that what I had dreamed was actually what I had done. I don't know where the game is at right now. Maybe it finally got hauled off to the dump where it belongs. Maybe my mother got a crazy idea to actually play it, and now she had to suffer the same torment that I did, while involuntarily passing it on to someone else. Wherever it is, be careful when you're playing it. If that Twilight has enough power to control people's actions in the real world, then who knows what she'll be capable of doing soon. Wow. What a story. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't amazing by any means. In fact, it was for the most part highly, reminiscent of Sonic.exe with the void-eyed Twilight, the blood splattering on the screen making the message. Again, reminiscent of Sonic.exe, but a remake of the original game by one of the co-developers. That one where, instead of the classic, I am God screen with the hyper-realistic looking Sonic, it was instead, again, a hyper-realistic Sonic, except with without the words I am God on the screen. Sonic himself was writing the words I am God with his own fingers in blood. That's what that part reminded me of. So, again, not amazing by any means, because again, it was mostly reminiscent of Sonic.exe for a vast majority of it, and pretty cliche because, game that doesn't exist on a console, looks perfectly fine in front, but something on the back just kind of gave away that something was wrong with it. Which is also very reminiscent of Strangled Red, if you remember that creepypasta from all those years ago. Yeah, so this creepypasta was basically just a bunch of, cliches, and very reminiscent of quite a couple creepypastas mixed into one. Again, I did say it wasn't very good, but what I do like is that did in fact reference an episode of the show Lesson Zero, which was essentially an episode about Twilight not being able to send a letter to Princess Celestia about what she had learned that day, and she was starting to lose her mind because she couldn't send Princess Celestia a letter. So she did quite literally whatever she could to write to Princess Celestia under any circumstance. And it was pretty, in that episode, kind of when I watched it when it first premiered over a decade ago, I remember that part creeped me out. And again, I was a teenager when that episode aired, right? So yeah, I watched My Little Pony when I was a teenager. In fact, I had started when I was 12 years old. I started watching it when I was 12 years old. In fact, I've still got my old My Little Pony coloring book from high school. My freshman year of high school at that. But yeah, when I watched that part of the episode when it premiered for the first time all those years ago, like, it creeped me out. So, seeing that the protagonist of the story saw that, except much more demented, just kind of just gave me flashbacks to seeing that creepy smile, which I am going to be using for the thumbnail, by the way. I'm going to try to use that image of not the black-eyed Twilight with the void for the two voids for the eyes and the void for the mouth. I'm not going to use that. I'm instead going to use like the Lesson Zero image of her smile just to show you how creepy it was, especially at the time. Like it, like that scene, that portion of the episode felt like I was watching like The Shining or something along the lines. Like, and again, horror games, horror movies, stuff like that, they don't get to me. Yet, a cartoon like My Little Pony that was meant for like 4 or 5-year-olds can creep me out like that in my teenage years. Like, it was quite unsettling. So yeah, while not exactly an amazing creepypasta by any means, because again, it is heavily flawed and cliched, it still had some of its charm in there. Again, referencing Lesson Zero, an actual episode of the show. And another cliche that it had was playing the author's like favorite song from the show for the title screen instead of the show's actual main theme, like, and then playing it in reverse later on until it eventually stops. It's just kind of reminiscent of like Tails Doll Curse. And again, another like Sonic.exe I say reference loosely, but another thing that Sonic.exe did was a sequence where the protagonist of the story goes to sleep after, playing the game, and they have like a dream of, and they just dream of, the game, but instead of the main character being like Sonic's world, Sonic coming after him, this protagonist was, doing exactly what they were doing at the start of the story when they got to the game, when they found the game, which was rummaging through trash. And another Tails doll reference is the game cartridge just vanishing. Again, yes, it's a game cartridge, but with the Tails doll curse, it was, a Tails doll. So, it's just kind of, again, not great by any means, but it wasn't terrible. It was heavily cliched, but it did actually reference the source material quite accurately, and honestly, I do in fact have to give it props for that. And this isn't actually my first time, reading it or hearing it either. I actually heard it for the first time yesterday. It was, I think, 4 in the morning yesterday. I heard that. Because I heard this after hearing the Super Mario 64 Damned. I heard listen to that creepypasta and then listen to this very creepypasta right afterwards. And it honestly made me want to read this. Because again, I used to be a My Little Pony fan back over a decade ago. I of course had to stop but before I was doing YouTube, My Little Pony was one of the only few things that actually helped me cope with the abuse I was going through at the time. Me and my 3 other siblings, all 4 of us watched My Little Pony back then. We all watched it together and we enjoyed it. It was one of the few things that we actually could enjoy as a family to help us cope with the abuse we were all going through at the time. Of course, that was a little over a decade ago, so things are completely different now. I have not been a My Little Pony fan for about 8 years for about 8 years now, so, and yes, I do still have my Little Pony coloring book from my freshman year of high school. I don't really touch it because, again, I'm not a My Little Pony fan anymore, so why would I really want to touch it? It just kind of sits there. But to be honest, I have kind of been wanting to watch it again, at least season 1 again, because, and the Equestria Girls movies, because those are really good. Rainbow Rocks especially was really good. I liked Rainbow Rocks back when it came out. But yeah, again, I'm not a My Little Pony fan, so I don't really watch it anymore. It's on Netflix, and I do have it added in my list, but I just haven't really gotten around to watching it yet. Because I'm still in the middle of watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. I started watching Sabrina the Animated Series a couple days ago. And yeah, I've just been watching a whole bunch of stuff that I don't really watch too often, so I haven't really found a point in trying to watch it. Because I'm the kind of person that likes to go back to something they watched when they were growing up, see if it still holds up. I've done that with a few shows, like iCarly, Victorious, Sam and Cat, Good Luck Charlie, stuff like that. I've done that, and with those shows, and they do still hold up. In fact, in some cases, they're much better and darker than they were when I was growing up watching them as a kid and as a teenager. Again, sometimes even darker. And honestly, My Little Pony's no different because, again, Lesson 0, Twilight practically went insane. Like, about halfway into the episode. And it just creeped me out as a kid. Well, teenager, I should say. Because it's like 2013 that episode aired, so yeah, it honestly was absolutely crazy to see that referenced. But yeah, honestly, that's all I have for this creepypasta reading video. This is going to be the format I'm going to do with these, at least for a little while. Let me know if you like a video in this style, and recommend a creepypasta to me. It could be like a gaming creepypasta, a lost episode creepypasta. Feel free to recommend me a creepypasta while you're at it. I'd be willing to read something new, even for a first time. Especially for a first time. But yeah, that's it for this creepypasta. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright, so a quick little update. I went looking, I Google searched the episode and for the picture of the thumbnail of, the creepy smiling Twilight, which is what the creepypasta references, except the creepypasta has, black voided eyes, black voided mouth. The thumbnail obviously doesn't, because you read it. You saw it. But, and I mentioned that I was a teenager when this episode first aired. I honestly wish that was the case, and it's unsettling. I remember watching it when I was a teenager when it first aired. Because, to my surprise, it turns out it didn't air for the first time when I was back in 2012, 2013, like I said it did. Or was it 2014? I forgot already. But I remember saying that I watched it for the first time when it first aired when I was a teenager. It came out, the episode aired for the first time October 15th, 2011. I was 12 years old. I was 12 years old when this episode aired. It was a season 2 episode. 2011. And again, I remember it airing when I was like 13, 14 for the first time. And apparently it seemed to have aired like before then. Which again is quite unsettling. So, not only did the creepypasta reference something that was actually terrifying in the show, surprisingly enough, but I also got Mandela affected at the same time, because, again, I remember watching it for the first time back in like 2012, 2013 when it aired. Or at least when I thought it aired for the first time. But no, turns out I watched it back on October 15th, 2011. So when it first aired, so again, that was third. That was like 12. Almost. It's going to be 13 years ago this year. So yeah, it's been forever. I honestly thought that was creepy. That I got Mandela affected. Again, I saw the episode's air date, looking for the thumbnail. Which surprisingly enough, I googled the episode title. I googled the episode title, and the thumbnail is quite literally the first image that pops up. Yeah, that image, that creepy image of Twilight in the bushes, the bird in the nest on her head. That's the frame of the episode the Creepypasta mentioned. You know, with the black voided eyes, the voided mouth. That's the exact image that the Creepypasta references. That frame. And that was the first image that popped up in Google Images when I googled the episode title. That's not a fucking coincidence. Like, I actually have goosebumps right now because there is no way that is a coincidence. Whew. But wow, I know it's crazy, but again, I can't believe I got Mandela affected. Huh. It happens to everybody, I guess. But yeah, that's it for real this time. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.